Okay. Today's webinar is on the topic of the power of silence and coaching space in systemic coaching. And we have Alain Cardon, a Master Certified Coach, to share on this topic. The webinar will be about 90 minutes, and ICF has approved 1.5 core competencies CCEU. So before I hand over the mic to Alain, let me introduce Alain. Alain is a Master Certified Coach since 2002 and mostly recognized for his specific competencies in systemic executive coaching, team coaching, and organizational coaching. Alain is also a systemic coach trainer and coach supervisor, which coach students in France, Belgium, Spain, Germany, and Romania, where he has opened a systemic coaching school in 2007. As far as his personal style for executive coaching, life coaching, team coaching, and organizational coaching clients, Alain has developed a direct, confronting, and empowering coaching approach, which may be defined as a blend of brief, systematic, creative, and breakthrough posture and techniques. Although French national and part-time resident, his intensely international personal life and career also makes it difficult to define Alain's executive coaching heritage as originating from one or another coaching school of thought, one or another national frame of reference. Since 1983, Alain Cardon has been a prolific speaker for the European Transactional Analysis Association and keynote speaker for the 2002 International Coach Federation European Conference at Sitges in Spain, for the first ICF Morocco Conference in Casablanca in March 2006, for the ICF Spain Conference in Madrid, November 2006, and for the World Trade Center, Bucharest, and internally for numerous corporations. Alain Cardon is also the author of numerous books, mostly first published at the editions The Organizations Paris. Some have been translated to Italian, Spanish, and Romanian. He has also written articles published in daily papers and periodicals in France, the United States, Italy, and Romania. So, Alain, I hand over the mic to you now. Let's welcome Alain, the power of silence and coaching space in systemic coaching.
Thank you. It's quite a long introduction. I didn't realize you had so much about me. So thank you for inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to share my perceptions about this what central skill, I would say, in coaching. And thank you all. I'm seeing there's a lot of participants coming from a lot of places, Finland, and I'm looking at the most recent ones in Russia. I've seen some Texas and Australia. I'm very impressed. This is quite a worldwide audience here. To get right into the subject of silence and space in coaching, and get started. Well, the idea is to first give you some thoughts on the silence, the place of silence in coaching, which I think is very, very important, a huge place. I'd like to say, I'll give some theory first and share some ideas about this, and then probably have a demonstration and have time for question and answer, and then more theory, maybe see how it flows. I don't really have a very set prepared scheme, and there's no slides to show you. There is, I'd like to say, as a resource, you'll see on my website in the article section in English and in French, there are articles about silence, at least one that I know of. There's a lot of articles and a lot of other things, so don't hesitate to go there as a resource. And there's also things on YouTube. I have at least 30 movies in English, shorts in English and French under Alain, Cardon, MCC. You have to put the MCC or you get to other people. So you have resources you could go and get after this talk. Now, to get into the central place of silence in coaching, I think silence is something that is actually in all the other competencies. And in a way, I feel that all the coaching skills that are the competencies is numbered from 1 to 12 or 1 to 11, depending, you can, because they're numbered, you could think they're separate and that they are in a certain order. My perception or my feeling, which is more systemic, is to say that every competency actually includes all the others. Coaching is like a gem, and you can look at it through any face of the gem. All the competencies include all the others. And that is especially true of silence. Just to give an idea, I mean, for instance, the function of a powerful question is to create silence in the client. In other words, if the client can answer the question right away, I would not consider it a powerful question. If the client hears the question and just suddenly falls into silence, his or her, and then the question is powerful. So every coaching skill is there to interrupt the client and sort of get them into silence. Now, this is taking the larger picture of silence. Of course, silence is also a very specific skill that you use throughout the coaching by inserting silence, by being silent as a coach. Now, for instance, as soon as the coaching session starts, it's very interesting to listen to what the client is saying in terms of what they want to achieve. But they're inserting silence in, almost interrupting sometimes the client to help them get into their silence, is a necessary skill, so as to get the clients beyond what they know and beyond what they're saying into their own silence, to find, the words for something deeper. So basically, I would say coaching should be an interruptive sort of sequence where as soon as the client is talking, if the feeling is that they know their words and they're saying something they already know, well, the coach could say, I have the feeling you already know all this. So, and that purpose is to almost tell the client that coaching is not about just spilling out what you know and describing what you know, but going deeper into what you don't know and searching for what you don't know, and try to put words and bend words and search for words about what you don't know, and explore the limits of your perception. In other words, if a client shares what they already know, well, they're just describing something and going maybe around in circles and things like this. So inserting silence is really important. And this is where actually it's not only the coach that needs to be silent sometimes. Actually, the silence is a shared space in the coaching relationship. And the coach needs to accompany the client in that silence. So very specifically, it is necessary for the coach to be very much at ease with silence, and almost cherish silence, cherish his own silence, and cherish the client's silence, because that's when the relationship really deepens, and when the client's search really gets into other levels. So for instance, to give an example, I like to think of silence in coaching as a vacuum. It's not only space in the sense of spatial relationship, horizontal space. It's space in the sense of empty space in volume. The function of silence is coaching. In coaching, in a way, could be like what you do in a pump or in a vacuum cleaner. By inserting silence in the relationship, it creates a vacuum, and the client starts feeling, well, empty space, everybody knows empty space loves to be filled. So by inserting space, that's almost giving the client the opportunity to go in deeper and find things to empty, to fill that space that comes from deeper levels and bottom-ups, emerging elements that he wasn't aware of before the coaching. So if you know what pumps are, these old pumps that that were in backyards and farms, this is way back. There's the vacuum. Actually, the stronger the vacuum, the stronger the empty space in coaching, the deeper you can go and get fresh water and cleaner water, in a way, less polluted water. The same happens in the coaching relationship. Now, there's something else about the pumps that I like, is usually with these old pumps, at the end of the day, you saved some water so as to be able to prime the pump a little later. The next day when you wanted to pump again, because if you waited a bit too long and started pumping, the seals wouldn't be all that wouldn't be sealed, actually. So you'd be pumping air. So what you would do is pour in some water, some of the previous day's water, into the pump, and then start pumping again. And the seal would be working and you could pump deeply. Now, in a way, that also is a technique that you use in coaching, and that's priming the pump, I would say, is serving the client some key word or some last word when they say a sentence. Of course, you want to choose a positive word and a solution-oriented word or a future-oriented word. So if the client says something like, I really don't know what to do, I'm searching for some options, the coach could say, options. And that's just taking the last word and serving it back. And so the client is going to move on into this direction of options. So in a way, there's some punctuation techniques that the coach should just serve in a very flowing way, like any punctuation in a sentence, by going, Of course, it's It's just with the client's flow, with the client's rhythm, maybe sometimes a little slower than the client. And that's just saying, I'm here, but you can go on. And I'm listening, but I'm silent, and you can go on. So silence is not, you need to watch out that the silence isn't excessive, because sometimes the client starts feeling alone. In the coaching relationship, you're silent and you're saying, I'm here, by just punctuation. On the phone, you could even, sigh or breathe or or clear your throat or whatever, in the client's rhythm, of course. Now, this happens naturally, because if you're really listening, you get into the client's rhythm. If you're getting a patience, you'll accelerate, and be quicker than the client's rhythm. So the client will feel you're impatient and will feel the pressure. And that's not the function of silence. The function of silence is just to give the empty space to the client. So basically, it's a really, really essential skill. And to do it well, it's important for the coach also to be in a form of inner silence, because you can't serve really quality silence to the client if you yourself are going through all your thoughts and thinking about solutions and holding back. So you have your 2 feet on the brakes, well, because you don't want to intervene, and you're holding back thinking it's important to be silent, but actually you want to speak. And that is restrained energy, and it's not the right kind of silence in a way. The good quality silence is actually just let go of all your own thoughts and let go of all your solutions that you're thinking about, and just watch them go by. Of course, sometimes, I mean, the client is talking about something and an idea pops to my mind, some kind of, it could be a solution or some content-oriented question because I want to know more. And I'll immediately sort of say, okay, that's not important for that solution. The client probably knows it. Come on. It's too easy searching for something else. So I'll just sort of let go of what comes to my mind by saying it's too obvious, it's too easy. The client is deeper than that and needs something else than this. And so get to my own inner silence is really important. I think in a way you could say that coaching is a meditative art. It's sort of more like a martial art or something like this. You need to be absolutely present to whatever is outside, but to be present to this and let it in. Of course, you can't be cluttered. You need to just let go of everything and be in your own empty space to add to the client's space. Now this actually, I would say, almost happens between people physically, because what has been tested actually is if 2 people are really tuned in to the same kind of space as they are together, gradually what can be measured is that the heartbeats start being at the same rate, the breathing starts going at the same rate, even though the brain waves start going at the same rate. The blood pressure starts adjusting to each other. 2 people that are really tuned into each other through a form of intense attention, shared attention. Actually, you could almost say the 2 bodies start vibrating as one, and the whole energy of this new entity, this shared entity, actually works towards helping the clients who work in their issue. So there's something physical about really being present and really being silent. Really being silent and not necessarily listening to the content of what the client is saying. Of course, you're listening to the words, the rhythm, the music, the whole context of what the client is saying. But a lot of this whole relationship that happens through silence actually happens beyond the words. And that is, for me, what is called listening beyond the words, or creating the coaching space. Silence is really, really central to this. Now, in a way, I also in systemic coaching and in my type of coaching, I ask the coaches, this is more particularly in the training, I ask the coaches to clearly know that when they're interrupting, they're moving into the client's space, and it's not their space. In a way, I would say what clients buy when they buy coaching is they buy empty space. They buy a space that will allow them to search deeper than they can in their everyday lives. We could say space today is total luxury. If you think of anything that's luxurious, like vacation, etc. I mean, the whole idea is a desert island. It's a space. Luxury apartments have space. They have volume. You have high ceilings. You have space. It's total luxury to be able to buy coaching that offers you real space. What people is they don't have is a lack of space. So if I have an issue and I start speaking about this issue to anybody in my life, they'll probably start intervening and give me some good advice and so on and so forth. And it's not because they want to push me to do something, but this is what happens. They may even start asking questions if they don't give advice, and sort of pressure me to move on and so on, and want me to solve the issue, but I won't be getting the space I need. So what clients actually buy is almost like a hotel room or something, and in that space, the coach has really no right to do things in that space. So when the clients are working, I train my coaches, the student coaches to knock on the door all the time before they do anything. So basically, is before interrupting, and it's paradoxical. It's to say, may I interrupt? To say it softly. May I ask a question? May I share a feeling? May I? A coach cannot just jump into the space and do something. You have to knock on the door, and you have to wait for an answer. You don't just barge into the client's room. I mean, you need to respect the client's space and come in almost on your tiptoes. It's kind of like service in a hotel room. I mean, I may be a client and being in my room and in whatever kind of intimate space, I don't want somebody to barge in. So there's a knock on the door, and of course I'll get ready to let somebody in, and then I'll say, yes, come in, or I'll open the door myself. And somebody may say, well, I'm coming to change the towels, or to open the bed or whatever. And I'll say, okay, now I don't expect the person to stay in the room. I expect them to change the towels, and then I'll say thank you, or they'll say thank you and goodbye, or have a good day, and they'll leave the room. So this needs to happen in coaching too. In other words, you can knock on the door and say, may I interrupt? And then now the client will say yes, and take time to say yes, or may say no, not now, and then I'll respect that. And then so it's all about respecting the silence. And then I may say, okay, I have a question, and I'll serve my question, and then I'll get back into silence, or I'll share a feeling, and then I'll say thank you for listening, and then I'll get back out of the client's space. I need to really respect the client's space, and if I'm getting into the space, it's sort of a tiptoe and respectfully, and then give it back to the client. In a way, I think that too many coaching definitions are saying it's about a conversation. It's more about a client conversation with himself or herself. You're giving space for the client's dialogue, the client's inner dialogue, to be able to bloom and come out, and for the client to discover whatever is deeper in them. So I'm taking this in a lot of different ways. So I hope that you're getting the idea, but in a way, we could say the word dialogue is actually really interesting. Most people think that dialogos, so that's Greek, and logos is obviously the word or the verb, logos, and then dia, people think it means two, like the opposite of monologue, so it's dialogue, and then you can say trialogue or something like this. Dialogue in Greek, dia does not mean two. it means the same as Latin via. In other words, dia is through. It's through logos. So when you say, let's have a dialogue, we could be two or a whole team or whatever, but it means that we're going to discover something through a dialogue. Now, in coaching, when you accompany a client dialogue, you're actually accompanying the client to find the words to write their own book about their own issue and their own frame of reference and find their own solutions. So you're you're giving the client an empty space, an empty page, so they can have their own inner dialogue. You're not intervening in this dialogue. It's not a discussion, actually. As a coach, having a discussion with a client, a discussion means to separate. Discussion is to break, like concussion. Discussion has nothing to do with coaching. So intervening in a client dialogue by bringing my own words and my own perceptions or my own interpretations, it's kind of filling the client's room with my own furniture. I mean, the client is not buying a cluttered room, and I'm just pushing my frame of reference on the client's frame of reference. I need to absolutely be empty myself and make sure that whatever the client is doing in terms of work is their own exploration and writing their own book. And this becomes almost, I would say, existential or spiritual, because you could say, actually, it's like in the Bible, they say, in the beginning there was the Word. So actually, the client is trying to find their word and trying to write their book, trying to define their universe, define their whole reality is what coaching is about. Now I'm taking it on a very large scale. You could say this is about life coaching, but it's also about any kind of issue. Even, I mean, what we could call an incremental issue or a project management issue or something like this. I mean, the client is searching for his own words, her own frame of reference, her own definitions, her own solutions, and they come from the inside. You cannot say that the clients know everything they need to know. They're smart, they're intelligent, and then start putting your words into their mouths. It's a total contradiction of coach definition. So actually, by saying all this, it's very clear for me that silence starts at the beginning of a coaching relationship and needs to be throughout the coaching relationship. It defines and it justifies all the other competencies. We could say in terms of systems, it's a meta competency that needs to accompany all the other competencies and be central. Now, I'm saying this, of course, because I'm looking at coaching through the lens of silence. You could almost say that every competency, if you look through the lens of that other competency, like direct, I don't know, language and so on, they all lead to all the others. All the competencies need to be present in all the other competencies. But I find that especially true in silence. So this, okay, is a very general introduction, and maybe it would be time to have a few questions or reactions to all of this. And see, what you would like to say or input into the discussion. Maybe also move into a demonstration, because it's time for a demonstration. So Florence, what do you want to kick in here and manage this, or I don't know how this goes down? Yes.
Yes, there are a few questions. I think I will start with the one that refers to the space, the silence. So there's this question from Victoria. She asked, which is your way to help a client who is used to jump into the silent space and fill it up very quickly to retain his urge and become comfortable with the silence?
Okay, obviously, for me, there can be a lot of different strategies. One could be to just say, you know, just be there and let the client fill the whole space. Now, after a while, you may have the feeling that the client is filling the space by going around in circles, so the client is really uncomfortable with silence, and so filling the space with words. It's clutter. It's not a search. It's not an inner search, but it's out of uneasiness. Now that's okay. In other words, you need to accept people as they are as a coach, and in a way, you could say the more somebody is extroverted, the more they're not at ease with silence, and the more they're introverted, the more they'll appreciate going into their silence and getting that space. Now, also, you could say, well, it's useful to help an introvert come out and share, because they could probably be silent the whole time and think they're working, but they're not sharing the words, and it's useful to put things into words, because putting into words gives it a form. And sharing it with the coach is a way of taking and helping. It's a way of having a witness to your work. In a way, we can say coaching in silence is like a witness in a wedding. The witness is not responsible for the wedding, and is not pushing the wedding, but the witness is just saying, I'm here, and you're doing this in my presence. So what you're doing is sacred. And so the whole putting into words is necessary for somebody that's completely introverted. Now, to come back to the question, is when the client is on the opposite, is filling all the space with a lot of blah, blah, and clutter, and going around in circles and so on. Well, the coach could leave it like this for a while. And then there's different types of interventions that are possible, because, well, the first thing I will feel, of course, is this client doesn't have much space in his life. Is filling all the space and is not leaving much space for other people. And so, for instance, typically that would be what's going on with somebody maybe that is going into micromanagement. That would be an example. I had a client once that was going into this and this and that and that, and explaining and explaining and explaining and explaining. And suddenly, you know, in one case, I intervened by saying, may I interrupt? And then I said, I'd like to share a feeling. I'm feeling I'm getting more and more passive, and just listening to you, and you're taking me, you know, here and there, and I'm listening, and I think you're doing good work, and it's very interesting, but I'm surprised by my passivity. And I just wonder, in your situation, who's passive and who's not intervening, and who's not taking their space, and how much space are they taking, or are they having? I'm just wondering about this in your situation, because this is happening to me here. Now, I may be totally wrong, but thank you for listening, and please go on. Now, of course, in the case where the client is talking about delegation and that they're doing everything and they're all over the board, and this is totally appropriate in the systemic way, because I'm sort of feeling what the entourage is feeling, is there's no space for us. this person is doing everything and taking up all this space, and there's no delegation, and we can't take initiative. So of course we're getting passive. So what's in a systemic coaching, the space, the coaching space is a good reflection of, it could be, of course, a good reflection of the space the client has in their life. So, of course, this is the whole systemic, what perception is, whatever is going on between the coach and the client, in which the coach is participating, of course. It's a sort of a fractal image of what the client is living in another situation with other people. So the whole thing needs to be perceived by the coach, the quality of the client's space that's being repeated here. Something happened to my screen. I hope everything's okay. So don't hesitate to tell me if something went wrong.
Yeah,
but,
it's okay, Alan. It's okay. I just
okay.
turned off the screen because I was thinking maybe I could type the questions onto on the box.
Okay.
I can see the question will be much better. So you go on. You go on with it. Okay.
Yeah. So coming back to this is, of course, when somebody fills all this space, there could be a lot of different strategies you have. But the first thing is, okay, you know something about what the client does with their space. You can say they have a cluttered life. They're really filling the whole space. They have no space for themselves. They're not breathing. So one very easy technique is to say, may I interrupt, and see if the client stops, and then just take a deep breath. And then say, thank you. Okay, please go on. In other words, you could just interrupt and to breathe. That may give the indication to the client that it's good to take a breather. You don't have to fill all the space and be anxious about filling the space and so on. So it's kind of paradoxical, because if you say, may I interrupt, you're already interrupting. And in a way, we could say, when the client or the coach is cluttering up the space, the function of coaching is to interrupt. Now, interruption is really important. Actually, we could say interruption is a way to create space in coaching. If you don't know how to interrupt, as a coach, you have an issue with empty space, and you have an issue with making space for novelty. A lot of people say, I'd like to change things in my life, and then they go on and go on and go on doing the same thing. Now, I would say my example for me is, if I want to go running in the morning, well, it's very easy if I know how to interrupt whatever I'm doing. But if I have my morning routines and I don't interrupt myself somewhere to stop the routine, I'm not going to make the space for what I want to do that is different from my routine. So I could, get up and do my routine and get into making my coffee and so on. And then at some point, if I want to go running, I need to interrupt myself. So while the coffee is going, I need to stop doing my routine and at least go put on my shorts or my running shoes. Okay, so that's starting something new thanks to an interruption. Now, people want novelty or want change or want space, but they don't interrupt. And coaching basically is about interruption to make space. So a huge coaching technique is to say, may I interrupt? Even if I don't know what I'm going to say. Now, when I interrupt, the client is going to say, yeah, sure. And then I could say, I have a feeling I'd like to share. But before I say this, I'm going to insert a few seconds. And then I could insert a few more seconds. So actually, it's not the content of what I'm going to say that is important. What is important is I'm giving space in a situation where the client has no space. He's not giving himself space. So I could say the feeling is kind of vague. I'm sort of feeling impatient or something, and maybe getting a little tense, and I wonder why. But don't worry, I mean, this is me. You know, this is just happening while I'm listening to you. Thank you for listening. Please go on. Okay. Now, if I wanted to make a systemic dimension out of it, I could say, before I say, please go on, I could say, this is me here. I'm wondering in your situation what this tenseness may be, or who's being tense, or what it has to do with the situation, or this impatience. It's just an idea, though. I'm not sure about this at all, but please go on. So in doing this, I mean, there's a number of little things I'm saying. The first is actually I'm interrupting to make space. The second is I'm sharing my feeling, and I'm saying it's just my feeling. I mean, it has probably nothing to do with what you're talking about. So it's a sort of low position. I'm not imposing this on the client. I'm saying I may be wrong, and I'm not sure about what I'm saying. This is my feeling. Feeling kind of impatient and tense. Yeah. Then I'm saying it may have something to do with the situation. The idea is like I'm a photographic plate and I'm getting these things and I'm wondering where it comes from. I mean, I'm not usually tense and impatient, but I may be wrong. Thank you for listening to me, and you're doing good work. Please go on. In other words, I'm not disqualifying the client in any way. I'm just, you know, giving a little picture here and then saying, please go on. Now, of course, there's a good chance the client won't feel I'm pushing anything because I'm doing this in a very low position. And there's a good chance the client will wonder, okay, who's tense? What's this impatience, etc.? What's going on? And we'll look at their situation with maybe a slightly different perspective. But at any rate, I haven't interrupted the endless flow that's coming from the client. So to answer the question, this is in a really long way. I'm sorry I'm so roundabout about it, but I'm coming back to this thing, which is actually to create silence, you have to interrupt the clutter, obviously, and then feed some silence into it. So there's a lot of different techniques. It depends on your strategy. In other words, it could be once there's an example of this, to give another example of teenager. Now, teenager coaching is rather characteristic, but you can do whatever you want. You can ask the teenage any question, and they may look at you with blank stare, and they're, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so typically it's interesting because it's a reverse situation. The teenager is, you know, we could say almost clueless in giving the coach of silence. So typically in a situation like this, the coach feels, okay, they don't know, what am I going to do? I need to ask a question, I need to do this, I need to do that. And actually it's really interesting because the teenager is delegating the space to the coach, and the coach may start feeling, I have to carry this, and I'll ask a question, you ask a question, and the client and the teenager says, well, I really don't know. and so this is delegating to the coach, and the coach feels the need to feel the space. Now, this could be really interesting to share. In other words, to say, you know, I'd like to share this feeling that I'm getting, that I have to do something. I have to ask questions. I have to think of options. I have to help you along. I almost have to carry you and do something for you. And of course, that would be, you know, that wouldn't be good coaching, and it wouldn't be good for you. I don't think it would be good for you. So I'm just sitting here managing this feeling and these feelings, and I can appreciate that you really don't know what you want. It's rather difficult, but I'm wondering, in your life, who feels they have to carry you the way I feel? Who feels they have to, you know, push you or challenge you, and who may be doing this in your environment? At any rate, I don't think it would be good to reproduce this here, and I'd like to have a different kind of relationship with you. So thank you for listening to me, and please go on. In other words, whatever is happening between the teenager and the coach could be really shared, basically the picture is obvious. I mean, the coaching is being paid by the client, and the client is saying the question, I get to, you know, and the client is repeating with the coach, and the coach is jumping into the client issue by repeating the same thing. So the teenager was sent by the parents are pressuring the teenager, and the teenager is reproducing the same kind of relationship with the coach. So the coach is starting to feel like the parents, and like they have to push, and so on. So obviously, speaking about this and not filling the silence for the clients is important. Now, back to the question I see on my screen. Which is the way to help? Yes.
Alain, this is the first question that you have been.
Oh, this is the one I was talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a few questions.
Yes.
Maybe I just run through with you to see whether during your response you probably have answered those questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hang on.
I have answered the question.
Yes. How about this?
How do you create a silent space for the client, a talkative one, besides asking a powerful question? Well, yeah, I could say, may I interrupt you? And then say, thank you. So you were saying?
So this has been answered, I suppose.
There's so many different strategies, but actually the main strategy, underlying strategy is how can I get the client to their silence? You know, and I could say, well, wow, you know, once I had a client that talked about the fact that they were doing everything in their organization, and that nobody would do anything, and they felt they were carrying everything, and so on. And in the coaching relationship, they were doing the same thing, you know. So I let them do it for a long time. And then after a while, I mean, the client sort of ran out, suddenly realized I was there. So one strategy is just to be silent, and until the client suddenly feels, hey, what's going on? I'm not being interrupted. And then you could say, okay, you know, this is, I'd like to share something now that I mean, I have some space. I'm taking it. I've been feeling really passive in this coaching relationship, and I've been, well, I'm perceiving, obviously, that you have a lot of things to share and a lot of things to, you know, you need a lot of space in this coaching relationship. So I thought the best thing to do was to give you all the space and let you have it. And now, in a way, I'm wondering, in your life, I mean, how much space do you need, how much space you're taking, and how much space people are giving you. Maybe you don't have enough and you want more. But what's happening in our coach relationship that needs to change according to you? You know, in other words, in a systemic way, you need to be always aware that the coaching space and the client space and the way we're participating in the client space is we're participating observers. We need to be aware of how we're participating observers. And so very often referring to what's going on between us by owning what I'm doing, not by, I can't make the client feel guilty. It's not the issue here. I need to own what I'm doing in this space and what I'm feeling in this space, and just tell the client, I'm wondering how that is related to what you're saying about your issue and your life and so on. But I may be completely wrong. I'm sorry. This is just my own questioning. So thank you for listening. What's your take on this? In other words, besides asking a question as a systemic coach, a lot of things are about sharing what's going on in the coaching relationship as a fractal image of what's going in the client's life. Now, this is rather subtle because you can't be doing this by making the client feel guilty and taking all the responsibility. It's about what the coach is doing as a participating observer. So for instance, this is really important to understand what's going on for me and myself as a coach. For instance, if in every coaching situation I get feelings of impatience and so on and so forth and whatever is going on, and I keep sharing this with the client, well, one question I should own very quickly is, how do I need to deal with my own impatience? This is not necessarily brought by the client. Now, if I'm quite at ease with time and I don't feel I have to fill time and I don't feel that this has necessarily to achieve a goal and so on, it's important the client takes their space, and I usually don't feel impatient. Then when I get a feeling that comes out, I can wonder how that is related to the situation. And sometimes I can even be paradoxical. I can say, what's really, really important is that you take your time here. In other words, if I feel impatient, I can intervene in the client by, telling the client, really take your time, because they're really slow. Now, if you tell somebody slow to take his time, paradoxically, they may start assuming their need to speed up. But it's also a boomerang. It has a boomerang effect on the coaches feeling impatient. By saying, take your time, I'm actually telling myself, hey, don't push. Okay, so there's a lot of different things. I don't want to give the impression, I started with this by saying a powerful question actually creates space for a client. That is not supposed to be the focus. I'm not looking for a powerful question. I'm looking at how the client is taking the space, taking their space, owning their space, appreciating the space, and developing in their space. So in a way, that's I made a talk about this once, and I think it's central.
Alain?
Yes?
Alain, may I interrupt?
Yes, please.
You have been so enriching with your sharing. But I think we have about 30 minutes more. And
yes.
you have 5 questions. We have still 5 questions unanswered, and the coaching demonstration. So how would you want to
let's do the demonstration. Let's do the demonstration.
Okay, let's do the demonstration first. Then after that, we will have more time. Then we will end with some more questions and answer. Okay. And
it will be short anyways.
And I think there's one very important question I think we need you to answer, which is about someone asked about the systemic coaching. What is systemic coaching? So I will bring that question up after the demonstration.
Okay. But we can't do everything in a conference on silence. So there may be a lot of questions about other things. I think I said a few things about systemic coaching related to silence, but let's not change the subject. It's just my concern. Let's stay really around the function of silence. Okay. But at any rate, let's do the and then we'll look at that question. But let's do the demonstration.
Okay, I'm bringing up Frank. Casey said that unfortunately she couldn't attend the webinar, so we will have Frank to be the coachee. So
okay,
please hold on. I'm getting him to the video.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Okay. So
now I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now I can hear you. It's good.
Okay, great. Alain, okay, so I'm an American living in the Philippines. I've lived here a long time. I'll get right to the point.
Wait. Before you get to the point.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hello.
Just to say I'm here and present for you, and thank you for volunteering and being there. I understand it's at the last minute because somebody else was so thank you for the initiative, and yes, please do. Maybe it's to say how much time we have, but we could aim for something like 8 minutes and make it very short. I don't know if that's okay with you. And then to make it, if you're okay with this, of course, is to quickly focus on what you would like to achieve during this this enormous time that is 8.
Yeah, maybe it should be an hour and 8 minutes, but we don't have that. So would you like me to describe a situation that I'd like to talk to you about?
We could say, actually, you know the situation, and maybe to change frame of reference, I don't really need the description.
Okay.
To know it, actually. So what would you like to do during those 8 minutes?
I have an issue, a business-related issue. And I've been in a quandary for some time, and that's why I wanted to just, I'll take up only a minute on it, but I've made an investment in a small company. I helped bail them out when they were about to go under, so I took some equity in the company. The founder and chairman of the company is I'm an old guy, so he's a young guy in his 30s. He's very aggressive, he's very smart. But he has a problem, and that has become my problem, is that he doesn't listen. And we're at a stage now where it's really important that he shares, we share, all of us together. There's one third party also involved in it, and try to reach resolution. So I'm at a point now where I'm saying to myself, maybe this isn't worth it anymore, and maybe I should get out and sell my equity and move on. So that's where I'm coming from on this. Would you like more?
Not necessarily. What I'm saying is, it sounds very clear for you. In other words, you know the situation.
Yes, I do know the situation.
Okay. So?
Well, the issue is more one of figuring out if I do leave, will I be able to recover some of my investment? Number one. Number two, the impact it'll have on third parties who are working with us. And there's also a personal aspect to it of, am I willing to put up with the aggravation of dealing with somebody who perhaps I'm losing some respect for? So it's not one-dimensional, it's multi-dimensional.
Yeah. It sounds, I mean, very clear to me that you know the situation, and almost as if the issue is not your decision, but the consequences.
Well, yeah, the decision will be based on my presumption of what the consequences will be. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an honest thing. Florence asked me to come up with something, and then I realized I really do have something. Because the point at which I have to make a decision is coming up, and I'm really unclear as to what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm myself, I'm ambivalent about the resolution of this situation.
Mm-hmm. So just again to reformulate, what you want to focus on seems to be how to come out of this by managing the consequences as well as possible, so they're positive for everybody.
Well, that's a good summarization of it. Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
That the action that I take, I understand what its future meaning will be, and I agree that's very important, because there's some other stakeholders involved. I don't want to hurt them by getting out and then having the company collapse or find it difficult to sustain itself. So yeah, that's true. It's the consequences of my action that are the real issue. But I haven't decided yet what to do. I may just stick with what I've been doing, which is maintaining my role. I'm the director of the company. We meet every week. Sometimes it's very contentious, but I can continue doing that.
Mm-hmm. So actually on the decision, you still have the open option, which is to continue and see where this leads, but at the same time, I don't hear much satisfaction with it. And the other option seems to be, okay, to do something about it, but manage the consequences the best possible way.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So my issue is one of making that decision, whether I'm going to actually split and make the attempt to split, because I need to find somebody to buy my equity, or whether I stay with it and just tough it through. So that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. I could serve a question which you probably have in mind.
Sorry.
Yes?
Sorry, yes, my phone. That's okay, let it go. It'll turn off.
No, but it's interesting. It comes at the right point, we could say. In other words, we could consider that this interruption means our time is over. The universe is conspiring here. But at any rate, I'd like to thank you for this. And maybe just leave a parting question, which would be, okay, suppose that you're 2 years from now, and that this is past you. And you're, now focusing on what you really want to do. What would you do if this was not in your hair? What do you want to do besides this? So you're wait. I'm not asking for an answer, but it's a parting question. In other words, you're liberated from this because. It feels like it's heavy, and when you have something heavy, it could be. So you're liberated from this, and you can move light and nimble and do what you really want to do now. What do you really want to do now that you're liberated from this? I think it's interesting for you to have that focus too. Okay. So you're 2 years from now and you're moving limble and you're really enjoying it and you're with the flow. What do you want to focus on? Okay, so of course, if our coaching session went on, and you could probably continue this with somebody else, I'm sure but that could be a question to serve now if our coaching relationship went on. Thank you very much for your sharing here on this. Hello, all of a sudden your image is frozen. I don't know if you're still there. Hello? Hello, hello? Yes?
Yeah,
Good?
it seems that he has frozen.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your sharing. I hope you're okay with stopping here.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, because
Yeah.
there are a few more questions to be answered. So I'll bring
Yes.
on the questions now again.
Yes, please. Yes, yes.
My apologies. My apologies.
It's okay. Thank you.
That's the problem with being in the Philippines.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I have an answer for you on that, but that's for another time.
Yes, yes, and it's for you. The question is not for me; it's for you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Now, so we're moving to another question. I don't have the full question here. How much should a coach wait before breaking this? I only have half the screen in front of me, but I can guess the first half, I guess, is how long should a coach wait before breaking the silence?
Yes.
Well, there's no rules. It could be immediate. For instance, if you just take the coaching sequence that we had with Frank, I mean, Frank was ready to jump in. He was warm. He wanted to describe the situation right away. And at the very beginning, I interrupted him before he started to say hello and to say thank you and so on, and to validate, and then to give it back to him by saying, you know, what do you want to achieve during the session? Now, interestingly, Frank continued on this frame of reference, at least that was my interpretation, because he didn't really answer what he wanted to achieve during the coaching session. He went back to saying, I'm going to give you a description, and he was focused on giving me the description. So my interruption to say, what do you want to achieve during the coaching session, which is a way of saying, this is going to happen in the 8 minutes. At the end of the 8 minutes, what have you achieved? I didn't really get an answer, and okay, I didn't insist, I let go. So in a way, to answer your question, you can wait a long time, or you can intervene immediately. It depends on the situation and your intuition. I'm still getting only half the screen here. I can't read the whole question. Maybe something's wrong with my screen.
Okay, and the next question is, what happens with clients who speak a lot and go to other topics different than the one he wanted to work on?
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, interruption is always useful. So as a coach, I could say, oh, there's so many options all the time. I could say, if I had a good relationship with a client and wanted to make a joke, I'd say, you know, I'd like to congratulate you. Yeah, I'm getting totally lost, so you're succeeding if that's your goal. You know, but at the same time, I'm wondering, you know, how everything you're doing is helping you achieve the goal you said you wanted, or maybe you've changed goals. So I'm here in you know, in a sort of la la land, but it's okay. I can manage it and I can deal with it. I'm wondering, in your situation, who's lost, or what, you know, the environment is feeling about this, or whatever. I may be completely wrong, but please go on. So again, this is a sort of systemic intervention of saying, what's going on here? What am I feeling? And it's okay. No, I could ask a more direct question by saying, I really have difficulty understanding how what you're saying is related to your initial goal, or if it's actually the introduction of a new direction that's more important. But please go on. This is just my thoughts, without making it systemic. There's so many options. I mean, in a way, I have a feeling that your questions are saying, what do you do? What do you do? There's a lot of different options, but you need to intervene. Coaching is interrupting. Coaching is interruptive. So any interruption is better than no interruption if the client is going around in circles or getting lost. So I see another question. Clients who just want quick solution. Can you read it, because I still have only.
Okay. It's from Sean. How do you handle a client who just wants quick solution, although all their options are time consuming? And when it comes to the silence moment, they will just say, I don't know. You tell me what I should do.
Well, it's interesting because that's the second sentence is a directive sentence. It's an order to the coach. So you can say, okay, I'll tell you what to do. You need to find your solutions. In other words, if the client is ordering the coach to be directive, it's a totally directive relationship. Now, paradoxically, I can be directive about the fact that I won't tell him what to do in the situation, but I'll tell him that he needs to find his options. Oh, I got the full screen. Thank you. So this is sort of a power game. And I could say, I have a feeling that, well, I like to share several feelings. One of them, I really don't know what you need to do. What you could do and what works. The second feeling I have is that I'm getting pressure from you, which may be your intention or not, but it's okay. I'm wondering who you're who's getting this pressure in your environment, who feels that they have to do things for you, or who's putting pressure on you, maybe. What's this pressure thing in your situation? But at any rate, in this coaching, I don't feel that I should respond to this pressure, and so I won't. But I'm wondering how you're moving forward in your issue and in your responsibility of the issue. It's just a thought. I'd like to share thoughts about what's going on between us. So in a way, there's a few ongoing rules here as a coach. Is first to be in a low position and be humble about it and offer things. Second, to speak about myself and what I'm going through without making the client feel guilty. I'm not going to say, you're pressuring me, this is da-da-da-da. I'm not going to speak about the client, but I'm going to speak about how I feel. And third, I'm going to say, I wonder how that's related to your situation. Who's putting pressure on you, or who do you expect is going to take your pressure and solve the issues? And this is just thought. So I mean, but please go on. I think you're working in a good way. So you may be getting the idea that there's a number of things I'm rolling out in terms of sharing, but I won't take the definition of the relationship that the client wants to impose. I'm seeing another question. What about the opposite situation? Empty space and very little issue for whatever reason. Well, if after I'm giving space and the client takes space and is not saying anything for a long while, I need to punctuate the space, because especially by phone, if I'm silent, I was doing this with Frank. I was going not necessarily inputting anything. One technique I use with Frank quite often is just restate in a very simple way. You know where you are. You have two options. At one point I was saying, it seems your decision is made. You're just, focusing on the consequences. Then later he came back and saying, well, I could, continue with the situation and not make a decision and just let it coast. So I went back and restated that. So very simple restatements is a way to giving the client, okay, you're there. This is what I hear that you're saying. So I'm giving them back the silence. Now, if there's too much silence and I'm not punctuating it, it's sort of like an empty hole. It becomes a black hole in space. You don't know. And the client may be lost. They're not working or daydreaming or something. So at some point is to say, I'm here, or are you there, or is there something you want to share, or I'm kind of feeling alone here, are you, or, yeah, can you share? So you don't really want to interrupt the silence because you don't know if the client is working or not. But the client will tell you. Once I was working on the phone, this is a long time, with a client in the States. I was based in France, and the phone, would sort of change tonality if you didn't speak into it. So if I was silent for a few minutes, all of a sudden it sounded like the connection was cut. So I'd start getting these feelings, and I would say hello, and while the client was silent, and he'd answer, yeah, I'm thinking. In other words, he didn't appreciate my interruption. I was just wanting to make sure that the connection was still on. So I had to learn, in this situation, to wait, and if the connection was broken, the client would call back, but I would not interrupt his silence, and that was a client that needed a lot of silence. Hi, Nurul. How can we react back to an aggressive client who keeps avoiding our interruption? Well, don't interrupt anymore. Let him do what he has to do. He wants to do this, let him do it. Let him do it. At the end, you could, maybe say, I'm wondering, I'd like to say something. You're doing fine work. You know where you want to go, and I'm sorry for interrupting and bothering you. I'd like to share feelings about myself. I sort of wonder what my place is in this coaching, how I can be useful, and sometimes I interrupt in the wrong way. But I'm learning to stay out, and you're fighting back quite well to keep me out. So congratulations. And I wonder, in your situation, with whom this is going on, who needs to fight to take the place, and who needs to fight to leave the place or get some. This is about the space between us, of course, which is okay here. I mean, I don't have an issue with it, but I wonder, in your situation, what's going on in this kind of maybe aggressive relationship or tense relationship. But please go on, and sorry for interrupting. So really, accompany the client. I'd like to say something before the end. I have observed that the American approach to coaching is much more intervention than the one you described. Yes, Americans are very often focused to pressure and get results and get results and get results. At the same time, saying coaching is not about getting results. And coaching is not about pressuring the clients. So yes, there is a North American tendency to be quite interventionist, I agree. And not too systemic, actually, I agree. What would you say about following one versus the other for the benefit of the client? I think the relationship is much more important than, I'll get back to a definition of coaching, and I think it's important. Coaching is about creating the space for the client to grow. If you take this literally, you can say it's like pregnancy. It's a uterine relationship. Creating the space for somebody to grow is a feminine approach. You don't push, you don't pull. Nature knows how to grow. The client knows how to grow. The client knows where he wants to go. The client inherently knows how to grow. I'm just creating a safe space for the other to grow. Coaching is therefore a uterine type of feminine approach. Okay. Now, most of the coaching I hear about is about being powerful, powerful questions, strong, clear contracts, very, actionable action plans, predictability, macho words. My tool is better than your tool. Let's compare our tools. Let's have powerful tools, etc., etc. So on the one hand, you have a very feminine description of coaching. On the other hand, you have a lot of macho behaviors focus on being powerful and moving the client from here to there. I think there needs to be a little more clarification on how coaching is gradually being taken in a direction that has nothing to do, I would say, with creating the space for clients to grow. This is where you really need to espouse what silence and creating the space is about. This is to get to a conclusion because we're here, concluding here. If you have not learned how to be okay with creating the space and letting the client take the space, and you haven't integrated the fundamentally feminine dimension of coaching, which is just let the thing grow. It knows how to grow. You don't have to be anxious about it growing. It's going to take the time to grow. Typically, it's 9 months. You can't speed it. You can't push it, okay? This is coaching, creating the space for the client to grow. The client knows. The client is to be respected. You can't have this on the one hand and in the next breath say, what powerful tool do you use to get the client to move, okay? Come on, let it go, respect nature. Coaching is fundamentally different from being a consultant and getting ego satisfaction about having moved the client to getting a solution, okay? So could you explain what is systemic coaching? Does it have a particular model? Well, it rests on systemic thinking. And that is a completely different view of the universe that is being pushed forward today with quantum thinking, quantum mechanics, and so on. And there's a lot of articles on my website about this. And a book on Kindle, I would say, which is quite systemic. I would suggest you go there and see it. It's called The Art of Masterful Coaching, or look at Alain Cardon, MCC, and there's a book in English, the True Art of Masterful Coaching, or something like that. It's totally systemic. I really develop in there everything you don't do, so as to let things happen, let the universe intervene. Sort of what happened with Frank when his phone rang to give us a cue that we needed to let go, both of us, although Frank really wanted to continue. And if I had the time, if we didn't have that other larger contract, we would have continued. So from what I see, Lisa, this Romanian time here, it's we're at the half. So thank you very much. And I'll let it back to you, Flo.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, there is one last question. Do you want to handle that? I've already given to those who wish to leave early the last password in the chat box. So if you need to go off early, you can look at the chat box for the last password. There is just, I think, two questions, just last two questions, for those who can stay back a little while for Alain to answer these two questions. The first one is how much, I think this is answered already. How much silence between a coach and a client is acceptable beyond which it gets awkward? I think you answered that already, right, Alain?
Yeah. I mean, there's no standard answer.
Yeah.
It depends, but make sure the silence is, the client doesn't feel alone all of a sudden in a black hole. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then the next one is, so you could bring back the lack of silence to the coach-client agreement and expectation of the client. So could you bring back the lack of silence to the coach-client agreements and expectation of the client?
Well, I don't know if in the agreement and the expectation of the client, it's written that silence is present. I mean, usually in the coaching agreement, I don't have anything about the coaching technique. The agreement is about, it's more about the goals the client wants to achieve and the client's expectation. It's kind of like when you get into a taxi cab or something, you don't have an agreement on how the cab is going to drive, the cab driver is going to drive. You have an agreement on what the client wants to achieve, So the question is, where do you want to go? And so the client is going to talk about the destination. Now, if the client starts wanting to control the drive, at most they'll say, I'd like to go through these streets and those streets and those streets. Now, if the client starts telling me how to drive in every little detail, I would say, well, why don't you buy yourself a car? This is a cabin. At some point, you don't go in a restaurant and walk into the kitchen and ask what kind of frying pan you use and stuff like that. So that I don't have in the agreement the details of how I work. This is up to my discretion. It's tactics and it's strategy and so on. That's why there's no, the whole process is not predefined. Okay? That's the relationship. It's what we call the emerging dimension in coaching. So you don't have a PowerPoint of your coaching relationship, and you don't go through a procedure. It's an open emerging process. Now, what emerging means literally is coming up from the bottom of the sea. Mergitur is the sea, and emerging is sort of the opposite of submerge. So actually, when you say a coaching is an emerging, it's creating the space for emerging solutions, etc. It's also an emerging relationship. You have to leave space for things to come up from the bottom. Now, bottom up, literally, I mean physically, is out of my head. It comes from my guts. It comes from my heart. It comes from my body. It comes from other dimensions than this top-down situation. The same thing in organizations. I mean, the whole thing about coaching is creating the space for things to happen, come up from the bottom of the organization and so on. Coaching is not accompanying top-down directivity in organization where space is stifled by top management and headquarters and so on and so forth. There's a lot of energy to get and new options from emerging solutions worldwide. I mean, this is a worldwide movement today. It almost becomes political, this emerging situation. It's what the web is about, what the internet is about. People are fed up with top-down stuff. So coaching is not about top-down anymore. It's not about controlling. It's not about predictability. It's not about making a freeway. It's about making space for emerging solutions for the client and so on. This is fundamental in the coaching relationship. And to get there, you need space, and space is silence. Okay, so I'm coming back to my conclusion and the central focus of silence in coaching. Forget all the other tools and forget the procedures and forget, standard answers and so on. Get to the silence. I'm really passionate about this. I'm sorry.
I can see your enthusiasm about space and silence. And just one final question that just came in. One final question. Is silence used in coaching similar in any way to silence during meditation?
Now in a way, yes, we could say that one excellent way for the coach to tame silence is to meditate on a regular basis. And now the function of meditation, of course, is probably different, because if you meditate, it's not, for the client. If you meditate, it's to make the space for something in you that is of a different nature than the clutter you have in your life. So we could say, in a way, meditation is the same as coaching for coaching yourself. You're giving yourself the silence you need, and the breathing space, and the expansion space that you need in your life. Now, when you give silence to a client, it's the same thing. And probably, I would say, the more the coach is in a meditative state or almost hypnotic state between the two, there's something that happens together that will allow for emerging dimensions that we may not have if we're too much in the content. So yes, I think that meditation and presence, we could say, actually, because if you're silent, it is in a form of presence that could be quite similar to the form of presence you achieve in meditation. I hope I answered.
Yes, and I think this topic is so interesting. Our participants are still around, and I just brought on this lady, Rohaisen. I think she wanted to talk to you. Is she on here already?
I can see a picture of a ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't see the person.
Yeah, I don't see the person too.
And now I'm getting okay. Now I don't need to see, really, but I can't hear.
So, Rohaisen, do you have a question for Alain? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, probably it could be a mistake that she raised her hand. All right, so we let her off.
Okay. She was just scratching her head.
Yeah, we let her off. Okay, so it's about the questions. We don't have any more. So really, thank you so much to all the participants for being so eager with this topic and coming with so many questions. I want to thank Frank, who is willing to step up to be the coaching client for Alain, though it was a short time, and also thank you to Alain for sharing on this great topic. So for those still around, the second password is space, and it's so in the chat box. Second password is space. And if you want to request for a CCU certificate, please email the secretary at icfmalaysia.org with the 2 passwords that we have given to you. And if you have any question for Alain Cardon, just email to alain.cardon@gmail.com, or you can visit his website. He has plenty of materials about his meta system coaching and a lot of things that he writes about space and so forth. And For any questions or feedback about the webinar, please then send your questions to webinar@icfmalaysia.org. And for the next webinar, we will have Sherry Boone, also a Master Certified Coach, and she will present on topic Masterful Coaching Presence, a model of trust, space, and focus. So please register at our ICF Malaysia website. It's on the 19th of April at 9 a.m. in the morning, Malaysia time. And please watch out for our International Coaching Summit with the team Engage, Empower, and Drive. It's going to happen on the 8th November. So keep yourself locked out your date for 8 November 2017. And do stay connected with us through our Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you wish to speak in one of our webinars or even the chapter meetings, please send in the application to icfmalaysia.org. And thank you very much. Thank you all great coaches and leaders for your participation and support. And thank you again to Alain. It was such a great, engaging, and informative presentation on space. And I hope all our participants, the coaches and the leaders have got something out of this presentation from Alain. Thank you so much. Blessings to you all for the rest of the week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Alain. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.